This is CNN. More people get their news from CNN than any other news source.
Hello and welcome. I'm Bianca Noblo in London, and this is the Global Brief. A vague statement from a Ukrainian regiment may suggest that the 3-month-long siege at the Azovstal steel plant in Mariupol may be coming to an end. And a historic shift for Sweden. The country confirms that it will apply for NATO membership. Then you thought Brexit had gone away, but it's making a comeback. The tensions on the Northern Ireland Protocol will debrief what it is and why it matters. We begin with breaking news from Ukraine. The months-long siege of Mariupol may be coming to an end. Russia says the evacuation of wounded Ukrainian fighters from the Azovstal steel plant is underway. We're just getting these new pictures of buses leaving the plant. They're reportedly heading to a nearby town that's under the control of Russian separatists. In a brief, vague statement, an Azov commander inside the plant says he's implementing orders of Ukraine's top leadership. It's still unclear if that means all the fighters are moving out. The plant was the last bastion of resistance in the key Donbass port. It's a much different scene in northeastern Ukraine, though. This video shows government troops celebrating a dramatic advance near Kharkiv. They say that they've reached the Russian border, telling President Volodymyr Zelensky in this video message, quote, "We made it." Our Sam Kiley is live in Kramatorsk, Ukraine. Sam, we are getting these vague reports and a message from the Azov military regiment. What's your interpretation of what we know so far?
Well, I think we've got to be fairly cautious here because it is such an extraordinary kind of historical moment, this incredible defence of Mariupol and then the Azovstal steelworks by what in the end were about 1,000 soldiers, now down to a few hundred, some of them very badly wounded. Now, we do know that there has been some kind of an evacuation of some of the more seriously wounded into the hands, effectively, of the Russians, negotiated, it would appear, with the agreement of the Ukrainian government. But even that has been difficult to establish. We've been trying to make contact with senior Ukrainian officials on this matter all day. That's CNN researchers and correspondents across the board, and nobody is talking. So clearly something is afoot. I mean, then we got this cryptic message from one of the leaders of the Azovstal a holdout unit themselves, and they're predominantly Azov regiment, but also some Ukrainian Marines. They are saying that they're implementing the orders, as you were saying in your intro there, Bianca, of the top echelons. But again, we don't know exactly what those orders are. We have got reporting from the Reuters news agency saying that some buses are being seen carrying at least wounded soldiers, but it's not clear what state others may be into the Russian-held territory. But we are standing by across the nation here in Ukraine for a statement that's expected from President Volodymyr Zelensky, possibly even in this hour. Bianca?
And Sam, Severodonetsk, not that far from where you are, is a key target for the Russians. So what can you tell us about the latest on the eastern offensive?
Well, yes, it is a key target. It is the other side of the Donets River, the river that is being used ultimately by Ukraine as a natural line of defence against any attempt by Russia to break through. And so far, they've been successfully forcing them back. And indeed, they've got them on the back foot around Kharkiv, as you said in your introduction there. But this is really, you mentioned targeting there in your question. It's all about targeting. One of the issues here is that there are large numbers of pro-Russian spies on the ground here feeding that kind of information, detailed information about targeting and the success or otherwise of Russian strikes against Ukrainian sites, and that is causing considerable problems, as we discovered on a recent raid with the Ukrainian secret police. This is the former headquarters of the SBU. That's the secret police, effectively, of Ukraine. Now, it was hit right at the beginning of the war with an airstrike. Clearly, from the Russian perspective, this is an immediate necessity to knock out the SBU's capacity here in Kramatorsk, because it is from this location that the counter-intelligence operation would have been run.
We've been working on him for about 4 days. We have a complete picture of his actions, says Sergei. This is Ukraine's most secretive force, the equivalent of the FBI, and then some. Sergei says We have identified a person who, according to our intelligence, is committing a crime. Simply put, this is a person who transmits to the Russian side, the Russian military, information about the locations of our units. Their snatch team with orders to grab an alleged Russian spy. The SBU says that spies feed a stream of information on troop movements and details of targets to Russia's aircraft and artillery. In this region, the SBU says it catches 1 or 2 agents run by Russia every day. And today's suspect is being watched. He's ours. There he goes, having a smoke.
Всем внимание. Зеленые штаны, черная кофта.
All units, green pants, black sweatshirt, 1000. Special forces sweep in. Resistance, pointless. Two Ukrainians are asked to witness the interrogation. With our camera present, protocols are followed to the letter. He's told why he's arrested for high treason during martial law and confesses on the spot to spying. He says that he was allegedly recruited online, gets orders via a messaging app from someone called Nikolai. The suspect says that he got about $10 for his alleged spying, which included the locations of Ukrainian military units in the town. According to an alleged exchange between him and his handler, the suspect was arrested mid-mission.
Завтра тоже нужна будет твоя помощь подобного характера. Будь на связи. Нужна будет инфа по проживанию военных в районе ЦНИЛ. Конкретика будет утром. Понял, принял. Добрый день, Геннадий. Ты вчера хорошо поработал. Сегодня необходима та же информация. Фото, видео, геоданные военных на ЦНИЛе. Сколько нужно времени для получения информации?
Ну вот я шел.
Как раз это вы шли, да, посмотреть эту информацию. Понял, принял, отпишусь. 1,5–2 часа. Это было, получается, сегодня, да, в 11:29.
Ну, примерно, да. Времени.
There's no death penalty for traitors here, but as he's driven through these gates, he'll know that if tried and convicted, he could spend a lifetime behind bars. Serhi's hometown is under constant Russian bombardment, so for him, this is no small victory. Russia's hitting us with missiles, rockets and air raids. These missiles hit the coordinates which are transmitted by these criminals. People die in these attacks, soldiers and civilians. But, he adds, the more atrocities the Russians commit, the harder it's getting for the Kremlin to recruit local spies.
Now, Bianca, obviously, after what we've seen in Mariupol, in Kharkiv, here in Kramatorsk, Slavyansk, Severodonetsk, these are all cities with Russian majority speakers, people who speak Russian as a mother tongue, the people that Vladimir Putin thought would be his natural supporters and constituents. But the level of violence that he's visited upon this region, I think, has turned the overwhelming majority, even of those who might have been pro-Russian in the past, firmly against this Russian incursion and against the Putin regime, Bianca.
Sam Kiley in Kramatorsk, thank you so much. Now, a war crimes investigation has been opened in the Ukrainian region of Chernihiv in light of a truly horrifying case there. A man says that he and his 2 brothers were buried alive and shot by Russian soldiers in March, around the same time as the onslaught you can see here. He's the only one of the brothers that has survived, and he's been speaking to CNN about the horrendous ordeal. Melissa Bell has his story.
This is where Mykola Kulichenko was buried alive. The blindfolds, he says, he and his 2 brothers were made to wear by Russian soldiers, still strewn by their shallow grave. Mykola shows us where the bullet entered his cheek. His brothers, Yevgen and Dmytro, were killed, but he managed to escape their tomb. I had to live to tell this story, not to Ukrainians, but to the world, he says. The regional prosecutor's office says a war crimes investigation's been opened. This is Mykola's house, where he lived with his 2 brothers and along with their sister. On March 18th, he says, Russian soldiers came into the village looking for men that they believed were responsible for an attack on one of their convoys. And that is when the family's nightmare began. 3 soldiers entered the house looking for anything that might link the brothers to the attack on the convoy. They found nothing, but what they did find was something to link the family to the military in the shape of their grandfather's military medal. They also found Yevgen's military bag, since as a reservist in the Ukrainian army, he was preparing to go and fight. For 4 days, their sister Irina heard nothing from her brothers, until Mykola came back from the dead. I came home and there was Mykola. I looked at his eyes and asked, "Where are the others?" He said, "There are no others." Mykola says that after being taken from their home, the 3 brothers were blindfolded and interrogated in a cellar for 4 days. They were then beaten and taken to the site of their execution. 2 months on, he still struggles to speak. What do I think of the Russians? I hate them with all my soul. They are animals. They should burn in hell. It was only after the Russian withdrawal that a month after their execution, Yevgeny and Dmytro were given a proper burial, a tombstone, and the peace that Mykola's been denied. Melissa Bell, CNN, Chernihiv region.
A groundswell of support is following Sweden's announcement Monday that it will join Finland in applying for NATO membership. Norway, Denmark, Iceland, France, the UK and the Baltic countries all say that they back the bids. Sweden's Prime Minister says that she has no doubt Russia will try to intimidate the country, but says Sweden's allies will push back, shoulder to shoulder.
Sweden will be very exposed during the time our application is being handled. Russia has said that it will undertake countermeasures if we join NATO. We can't rule out that Sweden will be the subject of disinformation and attempts at scaring and dividing us. But it is also clear that Sweden does not stand alone.
But NATO member Turkey says that it might oppose Sweden and Norway's NATO bids. It accuses both countries of hosting Kurdish terror organisations. The leaders of the Collective Security Treaty Organization, also known as the CSTO, met on Monday in Moscow to mark 20 years since the organization was founded in 2002. The meeting was attended by the leaders of Russia, Belarus, Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, and Armenia. Let's take a look at what emerged from the summit. Russian President Vladimir Putin told that same meeting that he doesn't directly view Sweden and Finland's bids to join NATO as a threat, but he warned that Russia would respond if NATO starts placing military hardware in those countries. Belarus is accusing Western nations of waging a full-scale hybrid war against it and Russia. Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko accused NATO of saber-rattling and said that the West is trying to prolong the war in Ukraine to weaken Russia. And after more than 3 decades, McDonald's is leaving Russia. The fast food giant announced Monday that doing business in the country no longer matches its values due to the humanitarian crisis created by the war in Ukraine. The burger chain has more than 800 locations across Russia. And coming up on the Global Brief, Brexit is in the past, but it's still causing political turmoil in Northern Ireland. We'll take a deep dive into the issue. And one of the world's most wanted men speaks to CNN, our exclusive interview with the deputy leader of the Taliban.
Our challenge was to determine the best ways for our citizens and visitors to safely enjoy the Tokyo they know and love. Tokyo is a fascinating city that integrates both tradition and innovation. As governor, my first duty is to keep Tokyo safe. We cautiously monitor the global and local situation, consulted experts on safety measures, and began to apply new policies so Tokyo could begin to open. As we prepare for travelers from around the world to visit again, we look forward to welcoming you and hope these new measures make for a safer and happier environment for everyone.
We've missed the globe-trotting and adventures, and we're longing to get out and go.
This is living.
Uncovering a city's DNA, meeting people who will share its secrets.
I love being here.
And making discoveries that wow.
You've got to be joking. Nice here, isn't it?
It's a world of wonder. Now, go and see it. Saturday on CNN, in association with Turkish Airlines.
The British Prime Minister is trying to ease political tensions in Northern Ireland. Boris Johnson visited Belfast on Monday to urge the region's political parties to come together and form a power-sharing government. But the divides are deep and not easily bridged. Their conflict centres around the Northern Ireland Protocol, an unpopular Brexit provision. For all of the disruption of Brexit, arguably the thorniest challenge and least debated beforehand was its effect on the island of Ireland. The Northern Ireland Protocol came into effect in 2020 to try and address some of these difficulties. It had two key objectives. Number one, protecting the EU's single market, which allows the free movement of people, goods, services and capital. Because This year's first total lunar eclipse created a super blood moon. This is what it looked like from the southern coast of Spain. With the sun, the moon, and Earth aligned, the moon took on a red glow as it passed through the shadow of the Earth. Well, thank you for watching. I will see you again tomorrow.
So much of business travel now is mixed with leisure. People are working from abroad. But yes, certainly the consulting trips, the Monday through Thursday, they are back and happening. Consultants are back on the road, engineers who need to do those factory visits, people in sales. So it's not quite off a cliff like people thought. But I think especially once that testing requirement is lifted, and I think businesses will feel more comfortable sending people out. But it will come back, but it'll just look a little bit different than what it used to. Whenever that testing requirement's lifted, we're going to see a shoot up in demand, especially international. And we're projecting at the Point Sky that airfare is going to continue rising steadily into June. It might taper off, but we'll see. But in general, booking last minute is not a smart bet in 2022.
Business is all about making connections. But some connections are easier to make than others. With a CNN partner hotel, the world is always at your fingertips. CNN partner hotels, connected to your world.
More mortar strikes very, very close. They want us to start moving.
There's a sense the Russians haven't yet brought their full destructive power to bear.
Vladimir and his men have been alert since 4 a.m, fearing a Russian attack.
They were living here in frigid temperatures.
Sounds to me like many of these war crimes will go unpunished.
In Helsinki,
Kyiv,
Kramatorsk.
This
is CNN.
This is CNN. More people get their news from CNN than any other news source.
Still the biggest draw in golf. Brace yourself for another Tiger Woods show this week. And why Arsenal's Champions League ambitions have been shattered by Newcastle. Hello, welcome to CNN World Sport. I'm Alex Thomas in London. In the game of golf, there's only one story in town ready this week as Tiger Woods returns to action for just the second time since a near-fatal car crash. He's at Southern Hills in Oklahoma, ready to compete for the second major of the men's season, the PGA Championship. Our own Don Riddell is there as well. And Don, Tiger isn't just turning up for fun. He was competitive at times on his return at the Masters last month and says he's even stronger now.
Yeah, absolutely right, Alex. He has been coming here since the Masters 5 weeks ago. He made a visit at the end of April. There were people hanging out of trees and helicopters in the air, everybody trying to get a good look at him. And now he is back here, of course, a golf course he loves. This was where he won one of his majors back in 2007. We followed him around on the back nine today. He was slow, methodical, careful. He spent a lot of time around the 17th green with a couple of wedges, just chipping from every conceivable angle. And he's looking good. He still has that rather robotic limp, that's never going to go away. He spoke to some reporters when he arrived here on Sunday, and he said, you know, he is stronger than he was at the Masters 5 weeks ago. That is only going to continue to get stronger. But he said he's never going to have the full range of mobility. He is always going to ache. That's just going to be the way it is. And we got an evidence, we got a kind of a glimpse of what he meant by that mobility. When he was playing with these two wedges around the 17th green, he never once bent down to pick either of them up. He'd either just kind of stand on the end and flick it up or scoop it up with his other club, which I thought was quite interesting. Really, really exciting to see what he can do here. Of course, he was competitive at the Masters, as you say. He made the cut, which a lot of other top players didn't do last month. And at 46 years of age, people are still excited to see him play. He could still do it. He believes it, otherwise he wouldn't be here. And he's playing in the 46th state of Oklahoma. Maybe there's some kind of omen in there, Alex. We'll see come the end of the week.
We will see. If Tiger's return is yet another minor miracle, Phil Mickelson's victory in the event last year at the age of 50 was certainly in that category, but there'll be no defending champion there this week.
Yeah, and it's a big deal when a defending major champion does not come back to have another go at winning the title. It doesn't happen often. Rory McIlroy, that was the last time it happened, when he couldn't defend his 2014 Open championship title because he'd injured his ankle playing football. The world number 6, Victor Hovland, a moment ago, described it to me as a bizarre situation that Mickelson isn't here, and I think that is quite the understatement. We know why Mickelson hasn't been playing golf for the last few months, ever since those highly controversial remarks were made about the Saudi government and the Saudi breakaway golf tour. Ever since those were publicized, he was roundly criticized. He lost pretty much all of his sponsors. He hasn't played in the last 3 months. He missed the Masters, where he's a 3-time champion, missed playing at Augusta for the first time since 1994. I think a lot of people expected that he would come back here, given that this was the tournament where he became the oldest major champion at the age of nearly 51 a year ago. But he notified the organisers last week that he wasn't going to be playing, and his future remains unclear. I think we'll get a really good sense of where he's at with the US Open next month. This is the only major title that he has never won. It's eluded him so many times. He got a 5-year exemption to play in that tournament by winning the PGA Championship last year. So if he doesn't show up to that at Brookline in Boston, then we'll have a very clear sense of kind of where he's at and his commitment to the PGA Tour. And Alex, I should just say this in conclusion. If you're one of those people that thinks that sport and politics shouldn't mix, as they so clearly are now in the case of Phil Mickelson, well, sport and politics are just impossible to pull apart. This tournament, the 2022 PGA Championship, was scheduled to be played somewhere else. It was going to be played at Bedminster in New Jersey. Of course, that is a golf course owned by the former President Donald Trump, and the tournament organisers took it away from Bedminster after the January 6th insurrection, which is why we now find ourselves here at Tulsa in Oklahoma.
Absolutely, ahead of that PGA Championship. Don Riddell, thanks for now. Much more from Don and the team. He'll be there all week for us as 156 players try to write their name into golf history, something that the legendary Sam Snead, Jack Nicklaus and Tom Watson have already done. Now K.H. Lee has joined that illustrious trio, becoming only the 4th man ever to successfully defend the Byron Nelson Classic title. The South Korean-born player holding off a star-studded field in Texas to storm to victory on Sunday with a final round 63, 9 under par, making 5 birdies on the outward 9, and then eagling the 12th hole here as he came home strongly. A birdie followed on 13, and then he showed his mental strength by sinking a crucial par putt on 17. It ended up being an emotional victory too, because it's his first since becoming a dad, weeks after that win in the same tournament last year, and it came in front of his own father, who named him Lee Kyung-hoon, which translates as, quote, making a name for himself in Seoul. He's certainly done that and has now changed his goals for the year, starting with making the cut at the PGA this week. He missed it last year. We've got more world sport for you in just a moment, including how Newcastle shattered Arsenal's Champions League ambitions.
What makes a great golf? Is it the one that electrifies? The one that is too good to be true? that just steals our breath. The one that shakes the world with a thunderstorm of 1,000 voices. The one that rewrites football history. Or is it a goal that is far greater than that? A goal we at Hyundai are committed to, driven by heart and technical prowess. A goal that humanity can only score together under one jersey, one flag, and for one monumental cause, a united world for sustainability. When we rise as one team, team-centric, we can still win this game.
Great things are coming. Are you in?
Hello, welcome back to World Sport. It looks as if Arsenal will have to wait at least one more season to return to the Champions League after suffering a 2-0 defeat to Newcastle United. The Gunners' run of 19 successive years qualifying for Europe's top club competition ended in 2017, and their fate this season is no longer in their own hands. They went behind to that Ben White own goal early in the second half at St James's Park. Bruno Guimaraes then sealing the win for Newcastle 5 minutes from the end. Arsenal players slumping to the ground at the final whistle as the implications sank in. Remember, a week ago, a fourth successive Premier League win had taken Arsenal 4 points clear of Tottenham. Now, as you can see there, after successive losses, including to Spurs, they trail their North London rivals by 2 points. Arsenal could still finish fourth if they win their final game and Tottenham lose, but Spurs face bottom club Norwich on the last day of the season, and they have a better goal difference. Monday's result also means that Chelsea will definitely qualify for next season's Champions League, but think of the recruitment problems for Arsenal, let alone all their investment future planning. What a mess for them. Further up the table, Liverpool, though, needing to beat Southampton on Tuesday to keep the title race alive. There's been a lot of talk about Jurgen Klopp's men bidding for a quadruple of trophies, but speaking to our own Amanda Davis earlier, football expert Marcus Speller said when it comes to the Premier League crown, it's all about Manchester City.
The task is simple. Win the game, you're champions. Now, we have seen Manchester City in this position before, of course. They won't want to leave it to the 93rd minute and an Aguero moment and all the rest of it. They want to get this done. But the narrative there is Steven Gerrard's Aston Villa standing in the way of people who say, you know, Steven Gerrard can finally win a title for Liverpool, all this kind of chat. So it's great that it's going down to the final day, as we thought it would be. But, of course, them dropping points against West Ham means there's just that little bit more in it for Liverpool. So obviously they need to better the result. You know, if they can beat Southampton as well. But it should be a great final day.
Yeah, we are all drawing on all the different storylines that you could pick up at this point in the season, because we want it to go all the way, don't we? But you know, how much of a part do you think Southampton could play against Liverpool tomorrow?
Well, we've seen sort of twists and turns, haven't we, in the Premier League? That's why, you know, you can never take your eyes off it. We expect Liverpool to win that game. We expected Manchester City to beat West Ham. That didn't happen. I mean, there's been a few jokes, of course, with issues potentially of goal difference and so on, and Southampton have yet to concede 9 for a little while, so maybe they could play their part in a way they wouldn't want to. But I fully expect Liverpool to win, which, again, takes it into that final day where they need to win their game, and hopefully, for their sakes, of course, Aston Villa would do them a favour.
Is there any part at this point where nerves come into play, do you think, and the psychology of it comes into play?
Definitely. I mean, there's no two ways about that. Again, I go back to that title they won under Mancini, where they were playing Queen's Park Rangers, who were battling for their lives on the final day, go down to 10 men, and they just get it over the line. Now, that was an easy win. So Manchester City, yeah, they will go into this. I mean, it was quite funny seeing Jack Grealish being interviewed. You know, he just seems to be completely impervious to any kind of pressure. And he said, "Oh, I'm absolutely buzzing, looking forward to it." That's what they need to do. They need to get it out of their heads that it's almost like a cup final for them, because on their day, Manchester City can beat pretty much anybody, and they can certainly beat Aston Villa. But if the crowd start getting a bit nervous, if Villa go a goal up or it's 0-0 after a while, then we will see nerves.
Where do you stand? Who is the better, more deserving champion? Pep Guardiola said everybody wants Liverpool to win, didn't he?
Yes, well, that's probably Pep bringing in his version of mind games or whatever. I don't know. The best team win the league. There's no two ways about that. And it shows you the margins that you're dealing with at the elite level. If Liverpool were to win the quadruple, we would talk about Liverpool as possibly the best English club side ever. Whereas if they were to win 3 cups and then finish second by a point or two, oh, well, they were a brilliant side, but you wouldn't. And that is the margins. It could just be a point. It could be 2 points. It could be goal difference. But you've got to get over the line. I think Manchester City will do it. I think it will be a little bit nervier than perhaps they want. But I do think that they've been great value. Both teams are so good, haven't they? But I think Manchester City will probably just do it.
Marcus Speller speaking to us earlier. Now, there'll be a new name on the NBA Championship trophy this year. 2021 winners, the Bucks, are out of the playoffs, and it wasn't even close.
I want this show, One World, to be a place where people watching from all corners of the globe can understand why what happens in Africa has a huge impact on all of our lives in ways we might never even know. Because of my background, I am well aware of the vibrancy of this continent, and I want to show that to the world. People of my continent do deserve to be heard. We are rich in ways beyond the soil beneath our feet.
One World with Zain Asher, weeknights on CNN.
I'm Marlene Oberheider, and I am a lead solutions engineer at OneTrust ESG. What's really great about leaders coming together at events like this is that you can really have that conversation amongst peers. You can learn from each other's expertise. And at the end of the day, sustainability, to me at least, shouldn't be a competition between companies. It is about collaborating. It is about working together to be more sustainable, to reduce our carbon footprint, to achieve the targets that we need to achieve as society at large. And therefore, having events like this, having this exchange, having discussions, and learning most of all is very, very valuable, and it's great to be back face to face after COVID as well and be able to look each other in the eye and have those important conversations.
Championship trophy this season. After last year's winners, the Milwaukee Bucks were dumped out of the playoffs, but even more surprising than that is how Luka Doncic and the Mavs conquered the highly fancied Phoenix Suns. Andy Scholes explains.
Well, Alex, we've seen this before in the NBA. When you have a generational type talent like Luka Doncic is, those players tend to pull off huge upsets. We saw it with LeBron James when he was 23 years old. He upset a great Detroit Pistons team in the playoffs. Well, now we have Luka upsetting the Suns. And Dallas just taking it to Phoenix from the start in Game 7. The defense was incredible, and Luka was just on fire. He scored 27 points in the first half, leading Dallas to a 30-point halftime lead.
Were you aware at halftime you had as many points as the Suns?
Oh, yeah, of course.
Yeah, you don't hear a player admit that very often. Luka had as many points as the Suns in the first half. He finished with 35. The Mavs at one point led this game by 46 points. And after winning 64 games and getting the top seed in the Western Conference, the Suns are now out of the playoffs. Their fans booing them throughout this game as they lost 123-90. It was one of the worst home playoff performances in a Game 7 in NBA history.
Tonight, our defense wasn't there, our offense wasn't there either. So I think Coach said a lot of it. You know what I mean? You play all season to be in this situation, and it didn't work out for us.
No one gave us a chance. A lot of people said it was going to be a blowout. Well, they were right, but they didn't have us on the winning side.
Honestly, I'm really happy, man. You can't get this smile off my face right now. I'm just really happy, you know. Honestly, I think we deserve this.
Giannis Antetokounmpo and the Bucks, meanwhile, trying to keep their title defense alive in Game 7 against the Celtics. Giannis had 25 points and 20 rebounds in this one, becoming the first player ever to have 200 points, 100 rebounds, and 50 assists in an NBA playoff series. And this game was close until the third quarter when the Celtics just caught fire. Grant Williams, one of the heroes for Boston in this one. He made 7 threes, finished with a career-high 27 points. First time ever he's led the Celtics in scoring, whether it be regular season or playoffs. Boston pulls away to win this one 109-81. They now move on to face the Heat. Game 1 of the Eastern Conference Finals is Tuesday night in Miami. And we had 2 more Game 7s in the NHL playoffs. Dallas fans were super close to one of the best sports nights ever. Stars were up 2-1 on the Flames in Game 7, but Calgary ties it. We go to overtime in the extra period off the rebound. Johnny Gaudreau puts it in to win the game. The Calgary fans outside just going crazy. Flames win the series and move on to face the Oilers in round 2. Calgary has not won the Stanley Cup since 1989. The Rangers and Penguins also playing a Game 7 thriller. New York's Micah Zibanejad tying the game late in regulation with a shot past goalie Tristan Jarry. So we go to overtime. Then Artemi Panarin coming through in the clutch with the game winner. Madison Square Garden just going nuts as the Rangers become the first team in playoff history to have 3 consecutive comeback wins in elimination games within the same series. New York's going to play Carolina in the next round starting on Wednesday. All right, finally, the Cincinnati Reds are the worst team in baseball, but they may have hit a new low on Sunday. They didn't give up a hit to the Pirates, but they still lost the game. In the 8th inning, they walked 3 Pirates, and then a run would come in when they didn't convert this double play. Pirates win 1-0, and since they were the home team, they didn't bat in the 9th inning, so the Reds only pitched 8 innings, which means it doesn't even count as an official no-hitter. It's the 6th time since 1900 and first since 2008 that a team has not allowed a hit and ended up losing the game. And Alex, as I mentioned, the Reds in last place in all of baseball right now. They play 162 games in Major League Baseball. It's certainly going to be a long summer there in Cincinnati.
Thanks to Andy Scholes there. We've got more golf for you in a moment. Not the PGA Championship, but a reflection on the sport by one of the biggest sporting personalities in America.
The beauty of the photograph is that when people do view the images, they have that visceral response. And I think when we can see an image of a fellow brother or sister around the world and we connect to that person, it brings it home, it makes it personal. My name is Lisa Christine, and I'm a humanitarian photographer. I believe that we can all do something to help in the fight against slavery. Something that really stands out to me is my experience that I had on Lake Volta in Ghana, where thousands of kids are enslaved in the fishing villages. The kids there work an inordinate amount of hours on an enormous body of water, although they're not taught how to swim. They are fishing and pulling in nets, and it's pretty intense out there on that lake. There's a young boy named Kofi who I met at a shelter. He had actually very recently been rescued. And I made this particular image at a well where this young boy was bathing. And he has all these water droplets on his face. But the thing that really stands out to me is that some months later, I learned that he had been reunited with his family. And then he got to go to school. And I think, well, who is he going to become because somebody took a stand for him?
So many questions about what is the federal government doing. Do you get the anger that is out here?
How concerned are you about the front line?
You don't believe that there's a racial divide here?
Looking back, as president, did you tell the story of race in America enough, do you think? All the places I've been and all the things I've seen, all the people I've talked to, I carry with me. They're a part of what I do right here, holding the powerful accountable, keeping them honest.
AC 360, Tuesday through Saturday only on CNN.
Hello, welcome back to World Sport. At the top of the show, we looked ahead to this week's PGA Championship, the second major of the men's season. Famed American sports writer and broadcaster Rick Riley is sure to be glued to the action along with the rest of us. He's such a fan of the sport. His latest book is about it. So Help Me Golf, Why We Love the Game, is not only a love letter to the sport and full of fun tales, but it also reveals why it saved Riley's relationship with his father. He's been speaking to our own Don Riddell.
What do you love about the game? I mean, this was a question I was going to ask, but given the title, perhaps, what do you hate about the game as well? I think kind of both apply.
You know, it's funny, Don. I hated golf as a kid. Until I was 12 years old, I vowed never to play it because my dad was a drunk. And he would come home and you could hear those spikes coming up the sidewalk, and that meant trouble, you know. That meant he was too drunk to take off his golf cleats that night, which meant we were going to catch hell. And I mean, you know, you had to hide. And so I hated golf. I blamed my family's trouble on golf. But then when my brother took me to a range when I was 11, 12 years old, and I started realizing it's not golf's fault, it's my dad's fault. And I started loving golf as a place where I could get away from all that. And I love that every golf hole's different, unlike every tennis court. I love the food is so good in golf. I mean, there's no good food in tennis. All the food is great in golf. And it's more than just the game, it's the whole friendship thing, you know?
Who do you find more interesting, the pro golfers, the famous guys, or just the average hackers that you might see out there on the weekend?
I love this whole book is mostly about us, the average hackers, and the hilarious things that happen. There's blind par 3 in Ireland at Lahinch, and you have to hit over a hill. You don't see the green, and you hit. They put a white rock, aim for the rock. In one day, in 2 hours' time, 4 guys made holes in one on a blind par 3. And that night in the bar's going crazy. Everybody's buying each other's drinks. The town people are in there, the caddies, everybody's in the bar. It's the greatest night in the bar's history until the bartender's wife walks in. She's got her 6-year-old son by the ear. She marches the son around to the bartender and says to her boy, she says, "You tell your dad what you were doing today." And the kid goes, I was putting balls in the hole. The kid had been dropping balls in the hole. That was great.
All right, so tell us about the power of the ring. This is a really cool story involving a lot of A-list golfers on the PGA Tour. What was the story?
Well, Webb Simpson has his caddy, Paul Tesori. And Paul Tesori married his girlfriend, but he couldn't afford a ring. But he was starting to make good money with Webb Simpson. So as they're driving to Augusta, she says, "I really want a ring. I really